What is up, everybody? Welcome back to RaceHoots.com and welcome back to our Kentucky Derby coverage here as we put a bow on the Kentucky Derby. Just a little trip note video here to kind of put, like I said, a bow on Kentucky Derby 150. I'm just going to go through the horses 1 through 20 at their order of finish and kind of just talk about the trips they got, maybe more so even their trips. Just, okay, what do we think of this horse moving forward? Because, look, everybody probably saw this. I'm not going to say anything that's going to be something you haven't seen before. It's just more of a projection of, okay, Derby's over. Here's what they did there. How can we move forward? We'll start with the winner, of course, Mystik Dan. And look, he got the trip that, you dream of if you're inside. Two things happened that really kind of got the job done for Mystik Dan, at least getting him that position early. And that was a clean break out of the gate and hustled to a spot on the rail and out hustled a horse we'll talk about in a second, Door Knock, to the rail, to the spot. If you're going to draw inside, this is the desired spot. So he got position early. He let the horse relax. He got him into position late. He squeezed through a tiny hole on the rail by Track Phantom. Shortest trip around, never left that rail the whole race, and then had just enough to hold off the second and third place runner. So it was an absolutely perfect trip. And more than the trip, the ride was spectacular by Brian Hernandez Jr. He deserves a ton of credit. In my opinion, he won this race for Mystik Dan. So a perfect trip, perfect ride, ton of credit goes to Brian Hernandez Jr. Second was Sierra Leone. Oh boy, did he cost a lot himself and another horse, Forever Young, the race. The more you watch this back, as good as Mystik Dan was, you just have a feeling if Sierra Leone would have just kept a straight course, either he would have kept the momentum going and won the race, or Forever Young, who we'll talk about in a second, would have won the race. For for Sierra Leone in the trip, it was exactly what you thought it would be. He broke from the rail. He didn't get crushed or anything like that. He just broke from the rail and dropped back. He had to go a little wide, on the turn, just like you thought. He was coming. He was barreling down. He starts lugging in to the left and lugging in and lugging in. It cost him the race. And it probably cost Forever Young the race as well. I don't really know if Sierra Leone keeps a straight path. Maybe he just blows by them all. Or maybe, Forever Young, who had a lot of momentum, if he's not impeded, maybe he blows through them all. I don't think you'll ever really know. But Sierra Leone, man, this will always go down as the Derby where Sierra Leone really messed things up. So anyway, he lugs in the whole stretch. He got pretty much the trip you thought he was going to get. It wasn't great, but for a closer in a field of 20, it wasn't bad either, really. It was kind of expected. Just the lugging in cost him. So we'll talk about Forever Young. There's no doubt in my mind there should have been a disqualification here. Sierra Leone probably should have been moved to third and Forever Young second. Not that really would have made a huge difference for bettors who had, make no difference for bettors who had Forever Young to win. Look, past the Sierra Leone stuff, once again, the overseas horses can't get out of the gate. And that was really what cost him. Yes, Sierra Leone banging into Forever Young, the whole stretch, that obviously cost him as well. But the fact that they were there together was the problem. Forever Young is a horse in his international races that have shown forwardly placed speed. Maybe not on the lead, but up near the lead, or at least stalking the pace. He gets crunched again, and I say again, as in all UAE Derby horses do. All international horses seem to just get the worst trips. He's crunched early. He's back to like 15th, and in my mind, I'm thinking, well, there it is again, a horrible trip, and he's not going to fire. The difference is this horse ran huge. He did fire. He didn't get discouraged. It was a horrific start. It was not a good first 100 yards of this race. As usual, like I said, he still came running. I can't help but think if he's sitting in 7th, 8th, 9th, where you kind of projected him to sit, maybe he wins this race and it's kind of easy for him, right? I still, even though Sierra Leone, I think still probably caused him to win, the start probably caused it more because it caused him to be further back than he wanted to be. And if he wasn't that far back, he may have never had to mess with Sierra Leone in this race. So I absolutely feel for anybody who bet this horse to win, because To me, he's the best horse. I don't know where he'll run next as far as United States racing goes, or if he will, but he proved it to me. John White had kind of convinced me, put him on a ticket because he said so many great things about him. I still didn't totally believe in him, but I said, I'm not going to let him beat me at the same time. And he proved it. I think he was the best horse in this race. All the talk about Japan's going to win this one day. Japan's going to win this one day. They got to figure out the gate, whether it's Japan or whether it's a horse in Europe. I mean, we've seen Mendelssohn, we've seen Thunder Snow. Figure out the gate in this race. That is the key. And again, I want to stress, if Forever Young gets his normal trip right from the gate, get a decent spot early, I don't think the bumping in the stretch would have mattered. I think he would have beat him, and I don't think it would have been all that close. That's the last thing they got to do. They got to figure out the gate, and it's a problem that is happening over and over and over. When they figure that out, they're probably going to win this race, but it's really, really difficult to win when you're constantly getting terrible trips in this race. So anyway, I feel bad for Forever Young. Let's move on. Catching Freedom. Great ride by Flavian Pratt. He basically hugged the rail as well, kept that horse out as much trouble as you could from breaking from the 4-hole. He followed Mystik Dan the whole way around. Where Mystik Dan went, Catching Freedom went with him. The only problem was in the stretch, he just wasn't quite good enough to get there. But he was fantastic. I thought this was a great ride. Catching Freedom's a good horse. I don't think he's great. I think he's good. Let's keep going. T.O. Password. The other Japan horse. Terrible break. Couldn't get out. Just a horrible trip again. He came running late to get fifth. Give him a lot of credit, but he had a terrible trip too. Both the Japan horses just did not have great trips. We keep on going down the list now. You can get a little bit quicker with some of these. Resilience and Stronghold breaking from the 18 and 19. They got trips that you could probably expect from horses breaking from those posts. They had to sit a little bit wide, but they got nice stocking trips. End of the day, probably just weren't quite good enough to win unless they got kind of a Mystik Dan type of trip/ride where they could hug the rail, save all the ground. It opens up, and they've got just enough to hold on. I mean, that's kind of what they needed. And when you draw the 18 and 19, you're just not going to get that unless you get extremely lucky. So, nothing to be too ashamed about for either one of those horses. They ran very well. Honor Marie, really tough as well. Bad trip. Got, beat up out of the gate, beat up the first 100 yards of the race, pretty much had to come from out of it. I wouldn't, say it's the end for him. It's one of those things. He just got a poor trip. He was kind of one of the candidates to maybe get a little bit of a rougher trip because of his running style, but I didn't think it'd be that bad. He really got shut off. So I would give him a pass. Endlessly kind of just did what you thought maybe he would do. He got a little bit too far behind. Tried to make a run, and it was just kind of a mild run, but he kind of just got too far behind early. There was some bumping that happened, but nothing crazy for considering how many horses were in this race. So kind of just what you thought from him is what he did. Dornoch, now listen, this was the big deal. I was kind of on record as saying, well, he drew the rail, but he has speed, and if they get him out of the gate and rush him up to the front, he could still be okay from there. Well, Mystik Dan took his spot. I mean, that's basically what happened. Dornoch broke from the gate decent enough. They weren't that aggressive with him, and Mystik Dan just kind of cut him off. And from that point, it was over for Dornoch. You never really saw him. And like I said, the gate really wasn't a problem. He broke okay. He gets cut off quick, and that was it. He got beat to his spot, basically, is what happened with him. Track Phantom, because Dornoch got beat to the spot, all of a sudden Track Phantom's on the lead. He's not, the type of horse that can go gate to wire in the Kentucky Derby. He got a pressured, pace up front, and he folded. No surprise there. West Saratoga kind of did West Saratoga type stuff, just mid-pack, just kind of wasn't good enough, real no excuse there. Domestic Product, kind of same, just dropped out of it, tried to make a run, wasn't good enough. Epic Ride, for a second, decided maybe to go to the front, then they kind of pulled him backed up, wasn't good enough, stocked the pace. Fierceness, talk about him for a second. I thought he was winning. Pretty much everything that I was saying before the race, Johnny Velasquez did perfectly. Not that my opinion matters, but I think that's pretty much what they wanted to do. He's breaking from the 17, get him out of the gate, sit him he's going to go wide, but sit him off the pace a little bit. They were going fast, but it wasn't overly fast, and he wasn't right up on it. In fact, on the backside, he's about a length off of it, and he looked really relaxed. And as they turned for home, I thought, all right, ask him. He'll pass these two horses. The two horses in front of him were Track Phantom and Just Steel. I had no fear of those two. He'll pass those two. He'll take the lead, and then we'll just see if he can hold it off. Nope, he didn't do any of that. They asked him to go, and he just faded like it was nothing. So, look, I mean, he has absolutely no excuse. He got the perfect trip for his situation, right? There wasn't horses to his outside until he got past. He wasn't like blazing on the front. He didn't pass those two horses up the backside and set like a 45 half or, a 110 6 furlongs. No, none of it. He just sat there. He had a great trip. Even if he fires from there and he gets past late and gets second or third, you go, well, he ran his race, right? Nope, he didn't. He didn't show up. So he was awful. Keep going here. I'm done talking about him. Society Man, another one that just kind of ran a race you kind of thought he would. Mid-pack fade, Grandmo the first, Catalytic, same kind of thing. Those three horses there, just that's who they kind of were coming in, and that's who they were in this race. Sometimes you can see a closer make a little bit more of an impact than maybe they should, but they just weren't good enough. And then finally, the last place finisher, Just a Touch. We'll talk about him for just a second. Basically what happened here, sometimes you get good draws and you still get poor trips. And he didn't come out of the gate very well. He kind of got crushed early in the race. He did not get that spot he wanted. His perfect spot would have been like with Mystik Dan, but just to his outside, basically. That would have been perfect. That's what you kind of envisioned. He didn't get it. And honestly, guys, he's an inexperienced horse who didn't get his spot. He looked very upset early. Very upset during the middle. I don't think at any point during this race, this horse was happy. And that's what happens. They just, when a horse that's kind of used to getting, second or third type of spot in a good spot like that, and they don't, especially for the first time that they don't, they just kind of say the heck with it. So that's what happened with him. I'd draw a line through it. I don't think it really means much for him going forward. So, all right, that'll do it for the recap of the Kentucky Derby. Like I say, moving forward, we'll see what happens. Can Mystik Dan do it in the Preakness? Sierra Leone probably going to go to the Belmont next. We'll see what happens with him. He seems like that would set up pretty good, as well as Catching Freedom. The two Japan horses, I don't know. I don't know when we'll see them again. They both have went home. We'll see if they come back at any point. All right, guys, that'll do it for the recap of the 150th Kentucky Derby. Hit that like button if you like it. Hit subscribe. You really like it. Want to get alerted anytime we do videos like this. And most importantly, keep tuned in to racingdudes.com.